Have you ever stopped to think if one day we will see robots that look like real people being used on battlefields? We are going to find out to what extent this idea, which seems distant, has already become a reality. And I know the first thing that comes to mind is that this is nonsense or something that only exists in games. But the truth is that technology is advancing very fast, and this is already happening, with new companies emerging and focusing exactly on this. We need to understand what is at stake now before it is too late. To show the reality, the people from the What the Future channel got exclusive access. They not only went to the company that is building one of the most promising robots for this purpose, the Phantom, but they also had the chance to control the machine with their own hands. We are going to see what they discovered there. The controversy has already begun. A humanoid robot being prepared for combat. Even before seeing everything it can do, what is your first reaction? Do you think this technology is a necessary advancement to protect human lives in risky missions or the beginning of a dangerous future? Leave your sincere opinion here in the comments. Remembering, folks, that if you like our project, besides your opinion, leave a like now so you don't forget. This helps this project immensely to continue bringing videos to you. Thank you. Let's get to the facts. Arriving there, the host went to see how the robot works. The Phantom has cameras on its head that can see everything around in 360 degrees. But the way they think about technology is very different. Many other robots use super complex sensors, like one called LiDAR, which works like a radar, but using light to create a 3D map of everything around. It is the same type of sensor that some modern cars use to drive themselves. But the people at this company think that having too many sensors can get in the way. Imagine if the camera says one thing and the light sensor says another. The robot could get confused. Therefore, they prefer a simpler approach. Use fewer sensors and fewer wires. In the next versions, all cables will be hidden inside the robot's body. One of the coolest and most difficult parts to build in such a robot is the hand. Being able to imitate all the movements that our hand makes is a giant challenge. The Phantom they showed used a glove, but underneath it had a mechanical hand that was not yet the final version. The team is creating a new, much more advanced one, which imitates the way our tendons work. They are like the strings we have inside our fingers and that allow us to make such precise movements. After many tests, the engineers came to the conclusion that there is no point in inventing too much. The best shape for a robotic hand is that of the human hand. With this new design, the robot will be able to pick up and manipulate objects with the same delicacy as a person, which is a huge breakthrough. And since we are talking about hands, things get even more serious. They are teaching the Phantom robot to fight for real. There is a plan to organize a boxing match between an American robot and a Chinese one. China, by the way, already holds several robot fighting events. The company staff guarantees that the Phantom has twice the rotational force in its motors than any other robot of the same size. Combining this with the force that comes from the hip, its punch would be, according to them, lethal. After watching the robot train, it was the host's turn to control the machine. He put on those virtual reality goggles, and suddenly it was as if he were in the robot's body. He saw what the robot saw, and by moving his hands, the robot moved its. The system tracked his fingers, and with a gesture, he turned the control on or off. For safety, the robot's movements were a bit slower than his. A few times the system glitched, and his left hand started controlling the robot's right arm, so they had to stop and configure everything again. But why control a robot from afar? There are two main reasons. The first is to teach the robot. For example, a person can control the robot to wash the dishes. Meanwhile, the robot records all the movements. After doing this several times, it learns the task, and in the future will be able to wash the dishes by itself. The second reason is to always have a human in command. In some situations, especially military ones, you do not want a robot to make decisions on its own. It is the same logic used with attack drones. There is always a human pilot sitting somewhere safe who presses the button. If the robot is in a complicated or armed situation, the final decision to act will always be made by a person. Then the conversation went straight to military use. The company already has contracts with the United States Army to use the robots for logistics tasks, which is basically helping to carry heavy equipment, organize supplies, and things like that. But the plans go much further. The founder imagines a future where robots are the first to enter a combat zone. They would go ahead mapping the place and identifying dangers. The decision to shoot or not, however, would remain with a human soldier. They are already talking about various uses, being the first to enter a suspicious building, searching for landmines in a field so that soldiers do not get hurt, and of course, the most controversial option of all, which would be to equip them with weapons to act on the front line. The video also shows that the technology is still in development. They show the robot learning to walk with a new program, and it still looks a bit clumsy, with the risk of falling. It is a constant work of adjustments so that it walks more firmly and naturally, like a person. This shows that despite the grandiose plans, they still have a way to go, especially if we compare it with other robots that already exist and are famous for doing acrobatics and running around. Finally, the conversation turned to a more social side. What will happen to our jobs? The company owner believes that in about 20 or 30 years, most of the heavy labor in factories will be done by robots, especially because to him, there will be a shortage of people wanting to do this type of service. At the same time, everyone worries that so many robots working could cause huge unemployment. The video even shows data that recently, the number of unemployed people has surpassed the number of available jobs. Faced with this, the founder thinks of two possible futures. One, more optimistic, is that with robots producing more things, products would become cheaper, people would buy more, and new types of jobs would emerge. The other scenario, more worrying, is that of many people without work. The solution could be something like a universal basic income, a salary that the government would pay to everyone. But he thinks this is dangerous, as it would give too much power to the government, which would start to control everyone's food, housing, and life. He ends by saying that historically major unemployment crises have generated revolts, but he hopes we do not need to reach that extreme to resolve things. In summary, the technology is jaw-dropping, but it also gives you butterflies to think about all the consequences. One thing is certain, this is no longer a thing of the distant future. It is happening now and will change many things in our lives. Now that you have seen the Phantom robot in action, from learning to walk to being trained to fight, and heard about the impact on jobs, the big question is the final balance of this technology positive or negative for humanity? If you were in command, would you step on the accelerator or the brake of the development of robots like this? Your opinion is the final piece of this discussion. Comment below.